So I don't even want to film an intro to this because I'm too excited to find out what the February prompt for TBR Tackle is going to be. Hi, my name is Sarah Freshly and welcome to Freshly Read Books. If you don't know what TBR Tackle is, I'm going to link to the video that I did talking about my TBR for it and also to Kieran's announcement video for it. And my Storygraph challenge that goes along with the challenge. But for now, we're just going to go ahead and watch Kieran's video so that I can find out what the February prompt is and which of these 11 books that I have next to me is going to be my next read. As a little reminder, this is the stack we are pulling from. Okay, let's do this.
Good evening, everyone. Are you ready for month 2, prompt 2 of the TBR Tackle? Let's find out what the next prompt is going to be. Say a very special maple syrup soaked hello to Jill from The Book Bully.
Hello, Kieran. Hello, lads and lasses, theys and thems. I'm very glad to be part of your reading stack challenge for 2022. Can't remember what it's called. Too lazy to look it up.
I like her.
Your February challenge is that I'm going to give you an item from the Costco website, and the cost of that item, the exact numbers of that item, is going to be the page limit for the book you must read. Do you know what I'm going to go with as our page count? It's going to be the hand warmers. They are $1.25 per unit. So the page count for your February book is 125 pages. However, there are some caveats to this. The first caveat is if you have a book that is shorter than 125 pages, you must swap the book, the longest book, on your stack for a shorter one. The second caveat might throw you a little bit, but if you only have books above this limit of 125 pages, you must swap the 3 shortest books on your stack for longer ones. And one of these longer books must be the one that you read for February.
Okay, so I think what I'm gonna do is replace the 3 shortest books on my list because I'm quite sure that I don't have any books that are under 125 pages on this list. So I'm gonna have to replace my 3 shortest books with longer books and then choose one of those books to read. And then I will get back to you with what I decided to do there. Okay, so I figured out what the shortest books on the list were, what I would be replacing them with, and what book I'm going to be reading this month. So let's go through that. The shortest book on my list was Infinite Country, so sadly I will not be reading that as a part of this challenge. That doesn't mean that I won't read it in 2022. I keep telling myself that. Like, while I was doing this, I had to keep being like, this doesn't mean you can't read it. Like, you can still read it if you want. And I've replaced it with Fight Club, which I think is my second oldest book on my TBR. So it would be really great to get this one crossed off. And I think I'd still be in the spirit of the challenge and that I am lowering my TBR and that I'm getting to one that I've been meaning to get to for quite some time. I have seen the movie, so I know that story, but I've never read the book. My next shortest book was Amnesty, so I won't be reading that well, no, wait, I might be reading it this year. I need to stop saying that. But it's no longer on the list, and I've replaced it with Milk Fed, and I can't remember what this is about at all. I just remember liking the cover and buying it. And then lastly, the most unfortunate loss, at least in my opinion, was Filthy Animals by Brandon Taylor. I was so sad about this. The funny thing is I put this on the list because I was worried that I would just kind of shove all my reading requirements aside, like the things that I had to be reading, and would just read this instead. So I figured I'd put it on the list and force myself to wait for it. And now I don't have that anymore. So really I can read this whenever I want. But I've got so much other reading I need to do. And that one I will be replacing with The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa. This is also going to be the book that I'll be reading for this month and in this video. This was nominated for the 2020 International Booker Prize. It was on the short list, which is why I bought it actually to begin with. That was how I heard about it. And I was excited to read it at the time, despite the fact that now I can't fully remember what it's about, but I was excited to read it at the time. And then I saw some reviews about it that made it sound, not like people disliked it, but that they felt a little meh about it. And so I lost my excitement for it. But I'm glad that I'll finally be making time for this one. So I guess I should get reading. What a turn of events. Did not turn out how I thought it was going to be. I am so glad that I'm doing this video for it though, because what a chaotic prompt announcement. Well, I finished a book. I mean, Not just any book, the book for this video. You know the one. It looks a little something like this. Anyway, I finished Yoko Ogawa's The Memory Police, which is the first book that I have read by her, despite being very interested in other books that she has written as well. This ended up being my first read for her. And now that I've read a book by her, I can confidently say that I will continue to read more from her. That being said, I did struggle a bit with this book, and I don't know how many people I would recommend it to. Like, there's a very specific type of reader that I would recommend this book to, and then outside of that, I don't know how many people I would. And I would say that I lean closer to being that type of reader without like fully being it, but maybe just like admiring it from a distance, hoping that maybe one day I can join them. Sorry, that got weird. So anyways, what is The Memory Police about? Well, this is kind of tough because if you were to look at like a synopsis of this or listen to other people talk about it, then oftentimes what you're going to see and hear is that this book is about people living on an island where things disappear, including the memories that the people on the island have of these things. So for example, roses or birds disappear and people destroy and get rid of the roses, and all mention of birds is gotten rid of. And when these things disappear, the memory police are the people that enforce these changes, that make sure that everything is removed. But it's not just physically done, it is mentally done as well. These memories, and I would say almost even more so mentally done, these memories of these items, the way you feel about an item the morning it disappears is different than the way you felt about it yesterday, to the point where you want to destroy it. But to describe the story in this way is almost like misleading, even though technically, yes, that is what it's about, because I think that this leads potential readers into thinking like, that's interesting. I wonder why they do that. And no, don't ask why. You'll only drive yourself crazy while you're reading. Not that I'm like speaking from experience or anything. You also might be tempted to think, well, how can the people get out of this? What can they do to combat what is happening to them? And also, no, don't think about that either. I do realize that it's kind of ironic that I'm telling you like not to think about things while talking about this book that's all about memories and forcing people to not think about things. So if you're not allowed to ask why or what happens next, what can you do? What is this book about? And to that I would say loss. In a million different meanings, this book is about loss. Don't think about how or why an item may have been disappeared. Much like the people of the island, just kind of accept it as a loss and continue reading. Because it's not about each individual thing, it's about the loss in general. It's about getting used to the idea of loss, about it getting easier and easier to lose things after you've already lost so much. So yeah, there's not much in the way of a plot. And there's not even much in the way of characters or like character development. This book is just like fully about the themes that it presents. Now, some people on the island don't forget, along with the others, providing this other perspective on the situation. They continue to remember these objects and they kind of have to blend in with everybody else. They still need to try to get rid of these items, or at least make it appear as if they no longer have them, because the memory police want to get rid of these people. They don't want these people around that can hold on to the memories they have of these things that are supposed to have been disappeared. The unnamed narrator of this story is good friends with one of these people who doesn't forget, and we see this struggle between pushing to remember and accepting the loss of the memory. But which person is better off? Now, there are many interpretations that could be taken throughout this book, but one of the popular ones is to compare it to times of war. Not the actual war that's going on, not the people that are fighting in the war, but back home in a country where a war is happening and you slowly lose the ability to either do things that you used to be able to do, or the resources that you used to have, you can no longer get to those. Maybe it's certain foods, or just that certain jobs aren't as available. You can't make money like you were able to prior to the war. So there's a lot of loss of luxuries that you might have been used to, of a certain lifestyle that you might have been used to, that you no longer have going through that period. And what is the right way to go about it? Is it better to accept that that's no longer a part of your life, that you've lost those things that you were able to do, the life that you were able to live, and just to transition into this new life that looks a lot different? Or is it better to remember those times and to tell stories of them and to keep them close to your heart? Which person is more sad, more depressed? I don't think that there's a right answer. And I don't think that there's a right answer in this book either. I think that both ways present challenges and struggles that the characters just kind of have to deal with. But like I said, this isn't the only interpretation of the book. There are many others. I will link to a video in the description that dives into more interpretations from this book. The idea of war, though, I think is just one of the easiest ways to talk about the book and what the book is about in a way that won't spoil anything. But if you don't mind diving more into it because either you've already read it or you just want more information before deciding if you want to read the book, then I would definitely recommend checking out that video. Oh, and I haven't even talked about the book that's within this book. So our narrator, our unnamed narrator, is a novelist, and throughout the book she is writing her own book. This story that she is writing is about a typist that loses her voice and continues to lose other things throughout the story. And it's funny because even though less time is spent within that story, it almost feels more sad, but I think it's just because you can see more quickly the loss that happens and the impact of that loss. It's all the more clear that loss and the acceptance of that loss. This question of, if I were to regain these things, how would I even act? What kind of person would I be? Maybe this loss at this point is so much a part of me that it's just who I am now. And if I were to get those things back, then I wouldn't be me anymore. So yeah, my overall thoughts is that this is a beautiful book. The writing is great. The themes are just laced kind of perfectly throughout the story to make you want to keep reading, even without having that plot-driven or character-driven aspect to it that would typically propel you through a story. As I said at the beginning of this video, I did struggle with this book and I wouldn't quite say that I loved it, but I do think that this is a book that I would love to discuss. Luckily, it is a book club book for my in-person book club within the next few months, so I will have that opportunity to talk more about it. But if you've read it, then I'd also love to know your thoughts in the comments. Oh, and I have to say, if you read this book and loved it, then I'd have to recommend that you also read The Employees by Olga Ravin if you haven't already. This is also a book that's more driven by themes than it is by characters or plots, and also one of those themes is this theme of loss. And while it seems sci-fi at first glance, it doesn't really dig into any of that, similarly to The Memory Police. Which also leads to, if you read The Employees and loved it, then I would highly recommend that you read The Memory Police. So there we have it. I've finished my February TBR Tackle, and this is the remaining stack. Although seeing how this month went, who knows how the rest of this challenge is gonna go. As in prompt-wise, we know that I will be reading a book every month that comes from my TBR, and that's about all we know. Speaking of, if you're wondering about my thoughts for the January book for TBR Tackle, which was The Green Mile by Stephen King, I think next week, as in a week from when this video goes out, I will be releasing my video on that one. So if you're curious about my thoughts for that, then keep an eye out for that video. Also, if you're doing the TBR Tackle, I'd love for you to comment what your February book is/was, depending on if you've read it yet. And if you want to go ahead and throw in what your January book was as well and how you ended up liking it, I'd love to know. Anyways, I think that's gonna do it for this video. Let me know if you want to continue to see these for each month of the TBR Tackle. I think it's kind of fun to react to the prompt, pick the book, read it, and talk about it all in one video. So if that's something that you're interested in seeing throughout 2022, do let me know. And of course, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I will see you back here next Wednesday. Bye.